Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today's edition is devoted to a comparison between Israel and its attack on nuclear assets of Iran and Ukraine and its attempted attack on Russian nuclear assets, specifically aircraft which was a part of the nuclear triad of Russia. Now, but most importantly is not just a comparison for comparison's sake. My argument here is that President Trump needs President Putin's help. And let me go step by step explaining what I mean. Now, the comparison, basically, the core of it is that both Ukraine and Israel wanted to deliver a crushing blow to its opponent. As we all know, in Israel, the calculation was to knock out the nuclear program, kill the scientists, kill the leaders of the Revolutionary Guard, and essentially do as much damage as possible, disrupting or destroying at best outcome the nuclear program of Iran. Now, the secondary goal was also to incite discontent of the population and, in the best possible scenario, lead to the regime change in Iran. Now, if we look at the Ukrainian or Zelensky's goals in the attack on the 1st of June on Russian aircraft, the strategic aircraft, a part of the nuclear triad, as they call in Russia, the goals is very similar: to deliver a substantial loss, if not a crushing blow, but at least a substantial loss to Russian aircraft, to Russian strategic bombers, to to demonstrate its strength to the allies, to President Trump, capacity to fight and win, get more aid, and the ultimate and most optimistic scenario is regime change in Russia, or at the very least that it would push, as the Western observers have claimed on numerous occasions, and some of them still claim, that would push Putin to negotiations. So in that sense, the two objectives of President Zelensky on the one hand and Prime Minister Netanyahu were very similar, in that both of them actually are similar in avoiding making President Trump aware of this. So this is another similarity. He was not informed, at least that's what he claims. And in both cases, Zelensky and Netanyahu tried to get the United States on their side, and maybe even to get them to fight a war for them. That's the key and the most important similarity. Israel knows it cannot win against Iran, but it counts on the US support. And the same thing actually happened with Zelensky. He hoped that he would get the Europeans to get President Trump continue with the policy of military support, providing all kinds of missiles and defense and advisors and money and all the rest of it. So that's the similarity. Both of them attack strategic assets of the adversary, and both of them count on the United States support. Now, in both cases, Trump is on record by saying he's not interested in fighting any new wars. So now we come to the next comparison, which is the similarity in the consequences. Now, in Ukrainian case, what Zelensky received was not a willingness of Putin to negotiate by being pushed and forced. No, exactly the opposite. The result was, as we all know, exactly the opposite. Not only did Russia intensify its bombing of strategic assets in Ukraine, but which is more important, as I discussed in many previous videos, is war aims changed. It is no longer a question of negotiating with what they call Zelensky regime. So that means that the war that not only they became worse for Ukraine in terms of perhaps a buffer zone, perhaps a greater number of provinces, but no negotiations with this regime anymore. So this is the message that President Putin sent to Trump. And now Ukraine is in limbo, trying to what to do and get the Europeans to fund the war, etc. Now the same sort of thing is happening in front of our very eyes in the case of Israeli attack on Iran. And that is that the ostensible goal of forcing Iran to comply and to submit to the conditions posed by Israel is going to lead to exact opposite result. The negotiations are off, they're cancelled, they're no longer interested in a negotiated settlement, and now they're full of determination to continue the war. And in this case, I would like to add a few words about the resilience of the Iranians and compare it to the resilience of the Israelis, and maybe even to the resilience of the Ukrainians. Now, about the Iranians, what the Western observers do not understand about Iran is that Iran is in the corner. It lived with Western sanctions for many, many years. And its very identity is rooted in Shia religion. Now, for those of you who don't know what Shia religion is, it's not only a version of Islam. It's a much more difficult and different ethical system as to the mainstream Islam. Now, its most important component is martyrdom. The Shia are people who know how to suffer. Moreover, the whole idea of suffering is kind of sacred in Shia. They are conditioned to think that that's what they're for. To love God is to suffer and to endure, because they endured persecution for centuries. So therefore, Shia take this attack on their very nature, on their religious identity, or their national identity, as something that they have to put up with, and they have to bear the brunt, and they have to fight on. That is a part of their culture and of their religion. So this means that any kind of Western talk about capitulation, or that they're going to fold like Syria, this is total nonsense. Syria consists of many ethnic groups and religious groups that are territorially fixed in a certain area. So it's kind of area which has a mix of Shia and Sunni and Druze and Alawites and Christians and others. Nothing of the sort about Iran. Iran is in vast majority is Persian by nationality, with a small Arab component in the south, and Shia in religion. And therefore it is not going to fold. It is as a nation state par excellence, with 80 million people, and quite developed in its technology, especially military technology. So their determination to fight as long as necessary cannot be dismissed. Now, about the resilience of Israel. Israel sounds like, and it behaves like, it's a superpower, and in many ways it is, but there are very significant challenges or weaknesses of the Israeli society, which is that it is sort of, one could say, a democracy, and that means that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not totally independent in his actions. In fact, the situation could change to a point that he would have to resign. I mean, that's quite possible. Ayatollah is not going to resign. Netanyahu may resign. Why he may resign? Well, if things get out of hand and become very difficult. And let me say this. Iranians have nowhere to go, and they're not going to abandon Iran and stream as refugees to overseas. If continued bombardment of Tel Aviv and other major Iranian cities continues, not excluded is the possibility that many Israelis will choose to take an exit to the United States or Britain or France or any other destination that they can afford to, and just wait it out, or some may leave it altogether. Moreover, the Israeli army is a citizens' army, which means it must share in the determination to fight on for Israel. Now, fighting for Israel is one thing, but attacking a country 1,600 kilometers away for the ostensible preventive war that risks the very survival of Israel is something else. And many people may feel, well, maybe it's easier to dump Netanyahu and conclude peace than to continue the war. Now, about the resilience of Ukraine, I spoke in many preceding videos. It is also very shaky. It is very shaky because the resistance to draft is growing, the desertion is growing, the weapon supply by Western powers is declining, the goal of NATO seems to be unachievable, and therefore it just from practical point of view, the best thing that the Ukrainians could do is sign the deal that they're offered, but Zelensky stubbornly refuses to do so, and he actually weakens Ukraine's position even further. So, and now we come to the crucial point in this discussion, and what that is the allies. What do the allies do, and what can they do, and what they should do? Now, the allies, meaning that on the Israeli side, it is the United States, obviously, and then a little bit, there's some chorus of support from France, Britain, and the usual suspects. On the Iran side, you do have a genuine ally, which is Russia, and you have China. Let me start with those. Now, China cannot afford to have Iran defeated because China is the biggest buyer of Iranian oil, but also because Iran is a member of BRICS, and it would be a strategic defeat for China if Iran was totally defeated. So it will not allow it. It would continue to supply it with whichever way they can, if need be. Now, the same thing for Russia. Russia cannot afford to lose Iran. Simply because it's an ally, because there is a treaty, and because they're a member of BRICS, and because the relations goes quite back in their joint political interest, and also because of the strategic importance of Iran for Russia, because the railroad that is being constructed and the trade route through Caspian Sea and Iran makes it possible for Russia to avoid any kind of pressure on its ports in the Baltic, in the Black Sea, which is controlled by NATO, and even in the Far East, which is controlled, not controlled, but which is kind of vulnerable to attacks from the US fleet in the Pacific facing Japan. Now, the route that goes to the Indian Ocean through Iran makes it possible for Russia to have access to the Indian Ocean without any obstacles whatsoever from any country whatsoever. So it is important strategically for Russia. Now, looking at the Israeli allies, which is Trump, I would say that he cannot afford, of course, to allow Israel to lose. On the other hand, I'm quite certain that Trump is not going to risk committing United States to a big war in the Middle East that risks actually his own presidency, his power, his prestige, and also the lives of American servicemen who are scattered in all kinds of bases in the Middle East. In other words, what really Trump wants is to get it over with as soon as possible, and the only way to do it is by concluding some kind of a peace deal with Iran. And that could only be done with the help of President Putin. And the formula that I think that is quite reasonable is that Netanyahu is out and a new government is coming to power in in Israel, and they sign a nuclear deal which was negotiated and almost completed. And then they try to iron out security arrangements for both parties. And then the next step would be to finish the war in Gaza and return to the agreement that Netanyahu scrapped and threw away. And that would mean to get the international community to agree that Palestinians would have to get their state. And then, in that case, Saudi Arabia could be on board too, and then the issue could be resolved. In other words, there is a peaceful solution, and it depends on two men and their cooperation, President Trump and President Putin, so that they force the hand of Netanyahu and force him to agree, or get him out to agree to these peace proposals that are now threatening the whole world with a nuclear war. Thank you very much. Please subscribe. I miss your comments, and I welcome them and I answer them. Until next edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin.